Well, thanks for coming. I hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you all next time. Okay. Well, thank you for coming for this year's first Stories That Matter. I want to thank the Elks, Matt and Liz back there in the bar for their support. And certainly on behalf of AZ Wordsmith, our mommy and daddy, and certainly Stories That Matter, we thank you for coming out today. So appreciate it. So, okay. You all have something to drink? Yeah. You're all lubed, ready to roll? Okay, okay, good. Because you want to support the Elks, and the money at the bar goes to help the outreach programs. And I know a lot of you know Liz's tagline. So when you're buying something at the bar, you are... There you go. Yeah, you're drinking for the children. All right, very good. Excellent. Yeah, just keep that in mind. That all those little munchkins you're out there, you're preventing them from deep diving into alcoholism. So, because everyone you take off the table, one they can't have. So, keep working at it. Okay, a couple of housekeeping things before we get rolling. Emergency exits, one right there where Matt is standing behind that bright light. On the other side of the building, there through the Sundance room, there is another emergency exit, fire escape. And to the my left of the elevator, there are stairs that will take you out to the front. And so in case there's an emergency, you're all on your own. Please take a moment, silence your phones. If you haven't already, we do want to not hear the jing-a-ling-a-ling or whatever you have for ringtone. Appreciate that. And restrooms. If you drink enough, you'll want the restrooms. And they are right out here. You go through these doors, take a right, take a left, take a right, and they're right there. So you can't, hard to miss. Photography is okay. So just be mindful of who's around you. No flash, please. Also, Matt, who is our photographer and videographer, will be taking photos, and the whole show is being videotaped and will be posted on our YouTube channel. So all of those things will be on our Facebook and our YouTube and all of the other stuff. So YouTube is Stories That Matter AZ at YouTube. And I don't even remember what our Facebook channel is. Do you remember what our Facebook? It's just AZ Wordsmith. Okay, we don't have one specifically. So, okay. So, anyways, I want to thank Matt for doing our photography and our videography. So, shameless plug number one: if you need those services. MSP Productions, okay, excellent, highly recommended. So, okay, ready to roll? Enough of that nonsense? Okay. Maya Angelou said once that there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. And I think it's probably true. But I think the question comes about, why do we listen to stories? Why do we want to hear stories? We believe, Stories That Matter and AZ Wordsmith, believe that storytelling helps people understand and remember and connect ideas by turning information into meaningful experiences. Instead of just presenting facts to you, stories that you'll hear will engage your emotions. They make messages more relatable and memorable across cultures and even generations. Stories allow individuals to share knowledge, preserve history, and express values in ways that resonate with everyone, with us all, anyways. By creating a connection between the storyteller and the audience, Storytelling builds empathy, strengthens communication, inspires action, and it makes it one of the most powerful tools we have for connecting with one another. Storytelling gives meaning and emotional context to the vast amount of information we encounter day in and day out in the world we live in. Stories can help us understand, remember, and connect on a human level. In our digital world, a world that is driven by speed and constant updates, storytelling helps us cut through the noise. Storytelling allows people to see different perspectives, something technology never going to be able to do. Storytelling bridges gaps between human experiences and technological advancement. So, it's time to take a storytelling journey with me, with us, and turn off the tech for a little bit, open your ears, hear with your eyes, listen with your heart, your head, your soul, to the stories you're about to hear. We got 6 good ones. So, what will happen? We'll have the 6 stories. They're set up 4, then there'll be a break, and then we'll draw a wild card or 2 from people that have entered their name into the box, and then we'll finish with the last 2 stories of the day. So, are you ready to hear some stories? Yeah. All right, excellent. Our first story of the evening, the afternoon, came to us from across the pond. Paul Abbott.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? So I'm going to give a little background to the story before I start. It's based in London in the 60s, when I was a little kid. I was about 7, 8 years old. It's a long time ago, so I'm not clear just how old I was. But I had an older brother who was 4 years older than me and a younger brother who was 2 years younger. And back in those days, in the summer, when all the schools were shut, they would shove us into old Victorian buildings that were pretty scary places, right? And we would be shoved through the iron gates and the doors would be locked. The gates would be locked. So all these kids would be playing out in these courtyards with these towering buildings above us, and we all hated it, obviously. And so my brothers and I would devise ways of escaping from these places. And this in itself was a great adventure because these places were built like prisons. They had really high walls with fences around them, okay? But cleverly, some of the kids would find ways of picking these locks on these huge iron gates, or go behind the bike sheds, shimmy up, climb over the walls. So my brothers and I did this one day. We were sick and tired of being in there. So we're out on the streets of London, and we were walking past this really long train bridge with an arch, like a lot of them were. And there was a line going into London and a line coming out of London. These are all electrified railway lines, right? So my brothers and I were walking along, and I see this long strip of packing metal, probably about 15 feet long. It's quite thin, that you put around pallets. So I see this thing, and my pyromaniac mind thinks, like this could be interesting. This is a good idea, right? So my brothers and I, we picked this thing up, and there's about 8 kids who have also escaped from the school. So we have to climb up onto this parapet of the bridge. So it's about 30 feet down to the railway lines, banks on either side. And so I say to my little brother, pass me up the metal, right? So he gets one end, my other brother gets the other end. So we're about 15 feet apart on the bridge. Other kids are getting up, looking over the edge. We're all anticipating a little spark or two, right? So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, whew, and it glides and floats through the air until it hits across all of the railway lines. The flash and the noise was so powerful, it knocked us all off the bridge on our asses, right? So we're all in the dust, going, what the fuck? And suddenly we see all this smoke and like flames licking up the side of the bridge. So I get up there and I'm pleased with my work, right? I'm thinking, this is heaven. This fits right into my whole setting things on fire stage of my life, right? So we're all looking over there and it's getting higher and higher and I'm thinking, oh shit, this is not good. This is getting worse. And the flames were licking under the bridge, over the bridge, all the banks on the side were on fire, right? We're not talking a little bonfire, we're talking real flames. 30 feet down, they're already licking over the top of the bridge, right? So my brothers and I thinking, how long can we stay here and watch this, right? Maybe we can sneak around the side and watch it from the side. But at that moment, I felt this grip on my wrist. And I look around and there's this guy standing there. And he's looking down at me and says, I've called the cops, I've called the fire brigade, they're on their way and you're not going anywhere. So all the other kids scatter. They all run except my 2 brothers. So they're standing there saying, let him go, mate, let him go, mister. And I'm starting to panic, right? Because I'd already got in trouble with the police a number of times for various things, which is another story. But I'm thinking, oh God, I'm really in trouble. And he grips me tighter. And I'm saying, please let me go, mate, please let me go. And at that moment, another man walks from the shadows, from the flames and the smoke, like some kind of savior, right? He says to this man, let him go. So I'm not letting him go. And he looks at him and he says, let him go. And I'm beginning to really panic, right? I'm going kind of limp. And this guy's holding me. And he walks right up in this bloke's face. And he said, let him go. And the other guy's getting all puffy, you know, and he's still gripping me tight. And then everything changed. I felt the guy's grip loosen on my arm. And the other guy was so close to him that, you know, he was this close to the other man. And I saw the other guy kind of stagger back a little bit. And he said to us, run. You know, the savior out the smoke was the one who told me to run. Right? So me and my brothers, we're scooting down the street. The fire engines are coming, the cops are coming the other way. The flames are so high that I had to stop for one last look at this incredible scene, right? All the trees are on fire, all, like it was an apocalyptic scene, right? And these 2 guys are still facing each other off. So we run. The fire engines come past, the cops. So we kind of went a little further on down the road and stopped so we could just watch this incredible scene. But all those years, we're talking 1967, something like that. All those years, I've thought about those 2 men. I've thought about how much trouble I would have been in if that man hadn't have come from the smoke and saved me. And over the years, I've thought a lot about this. I've told that story over and over in my mind. And it occurred to me that all through my life since that moment, I have tried to help other people out of a situation like that. When I was a selfish kid, man, I was all about myself. But as the years have gone by, I've started to notice, yeah, like if there's an underdog, if there's someone who's in trouble, and they could have done something bad, because what I did was not good, right? That was not a good idea. But over the years, I figured out that that was actually a really good idea, because it gave me a different perspective. It gave me something to work with. And I've ended up helping people out of prison, out of drug situations that seemed hopeless and helpless, in a vice grip that they could never get out of. So I feel that that experience was worth all of the trouble that it caused. I mean, it probably cost the government a lot of money to put that fire out, right? But that's, you know, it was worth it. So what seemed like a bad idea at the time, I believe can be really good things for us as we go through life. Thank you very much.
Paul told a wild card last year, and we kind of pursued him a little bit to come back and tell the whole story. When he was in London and he was a young boy, he said that he had a couple of things that he liked to do. One was he loved all the girls in his class when he was 5. So he was, what's the word, egalitarian, I guess? Yeah? I guess that's probably true. And he kind of alluded to some of his misspent youth, I guess you could say. He was a bit of a thief, and he would hide his stash in the bombed-out houses on the street that was still not cleaned up from the Second World War. So, an existence that, most of us can't visualize. So you can find Paul in a lot of the local. No, although that's possible. Bars work, but the galleries. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. He's a local artist and does some wonderful work, and you can see him. Are you at the Hive now, or still, or?
I'm not part of the Hive anymore, but I do frequent.
You do? Okay. Yeah, check out his work. Yeah. And of course the local spot behind the bar. That's right. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Thank you, Larry. Okay. Next up, Larry Urish.
I have a mini story to start, if I may. The fire thing reminded me of something I got to share. Take 2 seconds. Okay. I'll save that mini story for next time. Well, houses around us were going up in flames in Burbank, California. I went down to a cop. I lived in one of the houses, and I said, "You guys got any marshmallows?" I really did. One cop wanted to kill me, and the other one just cracked up. Okay. Higher. Okay. Okay. Anyway, let me start off. Can you hear me okay now? I was a little too far away.
Eat the mic.
Eat the mic.
Lick
okay.
the mic.
Lick the mic. I've got arrested for that once. Well, that was his name, so whatever. Sorry. Audience participation. Have any of you, show of hands, had a root canal? Okay, that's most of you. Imagine going through a root canal without any lidocaine or novocaine. A lot of fun, right? Hypothetical. Imagine after going through a lidocaine-free root canal, the dentist says, "Yeah, I'm sorry, we just did the wrong tooth. And we're going to charge you anyway." That's how pissed off I was when I got an error message on my computer. You all know what an error message is. It comes up, these digital sideways things that they drive me up the wall. I am a technophobe. And because of my technophobia, I have the IQ of spinach when it comes to anything computer related. So this error message, to me, looked like Russian acrylic held up to a mirror. And I didn't know what symbols, numbers, whatever. A couple words really stood out. One was fatal error, and the other was insufficient. So I felt insufficient over my fatal error. That's all I discerned. What happened was, I'm a freelance writer, and I had to print out a story I was about to send to the editor, and I like to proofread something on hard copy. So it was really important that I get this printout made. My Hewlett-Packard printer took a dive. I got the error message, this Russian acrylic thing. Because of my technophobia, perceptually, it looked as if the error message said in my brain, your Hewlett-Packard printer thinks you're a moron. And this error message agrees with your Hewlett-Packard printer. At this stage, knowing what little I know about computers, I have a 4-step troubleshooting process. Works every time. Step 1, since it was a printer, unplug the printer. Well, step 1, shut off the printer. Step 2, unplug the printer. Step 3, shut off the laptop. Step 4, unplug the television, laptop. I tried unplugging my television, that doesn't work either. Step 5 was unique for this situation because it was my printer. Step 5 is hunt down the CEO of Hewlett-Packard so I can kick him in the nuts, okay? And by the way, I've got very wide feet, so in a perfect world, I'd get them both. But some laughs, some groans. I didn't do that. Instead, I called my friend Ron, a very bright mechanical engineer, great guy. He dropped everything. I told him what was going on. He said, I'll be right over. He came over, checked out my computer and the printer, and did all sorts of stuff. I had no idea what he was doing. And he said, let me go out to my car. I've got something. You're going to get a kick out of this. He comes back with a printer that happens to be the exact same make and model of my printer. Sets it down. What are the odds? He hooks up his printer, works fine. Hooks up mine, different error message. Hooks up his, works fine. He says, you know, I'm pretty sure it's your printer, it's not your laptop. My girlfriend, it's her birthday. I'm going to take her out to lunch. I'll be back in a couple hours, but just sit tight. We'll figure this out. Don't worry about it. And I walked him out to the car. I thanked him. He took off. And then I decided to go for a walk around the block because I needed to calm down. It felt like I just had a root canal on the wrong tooth without any lidocaine, and I was going to pay for it. I was pissed off. So I thought, it was a beautiful day, not a cloud in the sky, 75 degrees, like what we've had here recently. And I began walking, and my mind sometimes comes up with these dialogues that happened in the recent past, and this is one that happened like 2 days earlier, just sort of random. I was reminded of the time I was at the gym, and a personal trainer asked me what my goals were as far as getting in shape. And the first thing that came to my mind was, I want to bench press my IQ, okay? He looked at me like, and I said, and let me add this, 65 pounds is harder than it looks. So with each step, with that error message, with that thought, I can feel with each step my IQ getting lower and lower and lower as my rage got higher and higher and higher. By the time I rounded the corner back to my home, I knew that this relaxing walk was like trying to put out a campfire with a bucket of jet fuel. It did not work. A normal person would have gone out back. I had a backyard, nice flowers, cinder block wall, you know, and a hammock, and hopped in the hammock and just chilled until Ron called back. Newsflash, I am not a normal person. I made a beeline to my laptop and hit print. I got the same error message. I hit print again. I got the same error message. Now at this stage, I kind of dissociated. This sounds kind of wacko, but I left my experience and I found myself standing in the corner of my bedroom / home office / kitchen / whatever, in the corner of the room, observing myself. And I said, that tall, then dark-haired person looks kind of pissed off. I'm noticing his clenching and unclenching fists and his clenching and unclenching jaw and his red face and the sweat. And it was with some detached curiosity that I said, it's interesting how this tall, dark-haired person is standing up and unplugging his printer. And I wonder why he's picking up the printer and holding it like a wounded puppy. And then I followed this whack job outside as he took the printer out toward the back patio and stopped. And I you know, from my point of view, outside of myself, it was with some detached amusement, I said, why is he raising that printer over his head Why is he bringing it down like a lumberjack smashing wood? What's going on? Okay. The printer exploded in shattered plastic. There was a small mushroom cloud of toner that went up because apparently the toner thing had cracked too. And it dawned on me as I was bringing it down, maybe I'm just out of paper, right? But I wasn't. It wasn't that. It was something I couldn't figure out. It would have been funny if I were just out of paper, whatever. I noticed that there were a couple splotches of that toner on my hand, and I said, well, all right, you just acted like a loon ball. You just destroyed your own printer. Wash this thing off and go relax and wait for Ron. You can tell him you destroyed your printer, whatever. I went into the bathroom, and when I looked in the mirror, staring it back at me was an Appalachian coal miner coming off his shift. Okay, everything but the lunch pail and the headlamp, my entire face was coated in black toner. And I went, that's pretty funny. You did a good one. Smooth move, X-Lax, okay? I thought, I was gonna go grab a beer, grab a book, go out to the hammock. Anyway, I thought, what the hell? Still covered in toner face, I stepped over the shattered printer, went out, said, this is a beautiful day, what a great day, got in the hammock, opened the book, took a sip of my Heineken, and the next thing I knew, which was about an hour later, I hear this voice calling from over the back of the cinder block fence, Mr. Bimbaum, very nosy individual. A rare moment I saw him without binoculars, and the voice that woke me up was, you okay? I woke up and said, I'm good, still toner-faced, toner coming down under the hammock. I got the book with toner on it. My beer has toner. You need anything? Like, I don't know, soap and a wash rag? And picture me, I'm this individual, this Appalachian coal miner with a book and a beer, raising his thumb saying, Mr. Bimbaum, I'm as happy as a clam at high tide. I'm good, have a nice day. By then I was awake, I got up, went to the back to wash off, get undressed, take a shower, wash all of it off, and then I noticed I'm drawing a blank here, sorry. My friend's printer was still there, Ron's printer. He left his printer. Mine was out in the patio destroyed. And I looked down and I had to shake my head because I was kind of baffled. I said, first a backstory. Ron was and still is a great participant in terms of sports. Runner, biker, swimmer, triathlete, etc. He hates spectator sports. He says, he used to chide me whenever I watched the Los Angeles Lakers on TV. He said I was wasting my time ogling multimillionaire pituitary cases running around in their shorts, which is true. So it was with some befuddlement that I said, looking down at his printer, what are the odds that his printer would have my LA Lakers logo on the printer? I had just destroyed his printer. Okay, he came back about 2 hours later, told him what happened. He didn't punch me out or anything, he should have. He said, listen, I'm gonna go buy 2 printers. I need one, obviously. You need one. Save the receipt, pay me back, etc. I said, that's fine, no problem. He said, one other thing, just be grateful. And I said, I just went ballistic. I just destroyed your printer. I just spent an hour in blackface toner in a hammock. What am I grateful for? He said, just be grateful we don't drive the same car. Thanks for coming out. See you next time.
Yeah, I think with the exception of actually smashing the printer, I think probably most of us have been near there somehow or another, close to there. Larry is a freelance writer and known for penning the world's shortest obituary. The man who invented autocorrect has died. May he restaurant in peace. Larry frequents our sister group, open mic, our AZ Wordsmith open mic, and he is a wonderful story writer and storyteller. And some of his humor is, as you can probably guess, is very, very crisp. So if you haven't come to our open mic night, which is the second Wednesday of every night over in no, it's here now. We have it in this room because we've grown up. Certainly you're welcome to check it out. It's a lot of fun. Okay, thank you, Larry. Okay, our next storyteller is Christopher Gillis. Come on up.
A guy once told me that buffalo teeth are supposed to give you courage. Well, that guy's full of shit. When I was 17 years old, I saw a movie called Risky Business. It changed my worldview. At 17, my sister was about to graduate from college, and my parents considered themselves empty nesters now. And they would leave me home alone. And on one of the trips, when they were leaving me home alone, I was watching Risky Business. If you don't remember the story, it's about a man named Joel, Tom Cruise. He is learning to be an entrepreneur. He's a good kid, and he's trying really hard to do all the right things, and he's also very horny. A friend who's trying to help him resolve his growing anxiety about the future tells him 3 letters. He says, "What the fuck?" Just go out there and do something. Now my parents, they would leave me home alone, and they would leave me what I would call a peasant's wages, just enough money to live off of for food. However, I would not be taking those Hamiltons and going to McDonald's. I took them over to the sporting goods store, and I said to myself in this moment is, what the fuck? And I bought an airsoft gun. And in a tub this big, it was 10,000 rounds of plastic airsoft BBs. At the time, I was living in Northern Virginia, and it was 2002. So that meant we were about a crow's fly from the Pentagon. It was also the time of the DC sniper, and I had just bought myself this thing that looked like a real gun, and I wanted to play with it. And I knew shooting it in the backyard would be a bad idea. Someone might call me in as the next DC sniper, if you remember that. So I bought a little target and had a net on the back so it would catch the BBs. I'm like, oh, this is a great idea. I put it inside my parents' entertainment room. I also went through scavenged through all my father's things, because that's what I did as a curious young man. Much like Joel, turning up his receiver on his dad's speakers and playing the music and dancing to old-time rock and roll with no pants on. However, I didn't dance, but I still didn't have pants on because I was home alone, and I took this airsoft gun and I did diving while shooting in the entertainment room. If you can imagine any of those gung fu movies, that's what I imagined myself as at the time. And airsoft BBs, they're little plastic BBs, and they like to bounce, unlike the metal ones. And I didn't know that at the time, and I was still learning how to shoot, so these would ricochet all over the place. One of them actually ricocheted and knocked down my father's 1988 commemorative World's Oldest Rodeo poster. And the frame smashed. And it was actually, when I fell on the ground, the ground was littered with BBs because I had 10,000 of them. And by the time I was done shooting all these BBs, I went to go pick up the target, and I didn't realize that the net would actually ricochet because I was shooting at 150 FPS, feet per second. It's amazing that I didn't shoot my eye out at the time, but but it ricocheted against my father's entertainment center, and he had this entertainment center from Germany. In fact, my father worked in the military, and we traveled around a lot. And he bought this entertainment center when I was 1 year old from Germany. Oh, sorry, I was about 2 years old. And he carried it around all these places we moved. And it looked super expensive, too. I thought it was a lot of money because it was huge. And I put the Target at the bottom shelf. That's back when they used shelving to put your VHS tapes in. And you put it in, close it so you couldn't see your tapes, because my dad was also a clean freak. The ricochet marks put me into a frantic state. There are just these little indentations on the wood. I was in a frantic state because how many people do you know have a signed birthday card from the President of the United States? That's my father. My father, the reason we were living in Berlin, I just found this out a year ago, is my father was an interrogator and handler for spies. Berlin Wall stuff. My father also addressed the Pentagon once a week on counterintelligence. My father knew how to interrogate people for a living. My father was also a clean freak. And there are 10,000 BBs on the ground and this damaged, expensive German wood. So I ran to where my father keeps his tools. I grabbed tools, and I grabbed the sandpaper, and I start sanding the German wood. And I start thinking about that movie with that great advice that said, "What the fuck?" And I said, "I'm really fucked right now." And I start praying to the gods of carpentry as I'm rubbing on this expensive German wood. And then all of a sudden, I take, as clarity comes, and I look down at what I just did, and I see particle board. I wonder why I have an ulcer today. I run back over to my father's tool area, and I grab the lacquer, and I take the lacquer, and then I paint it on. It's like, heck, you won't notice, yeah? You won't notice at all. I had to drive my parents to the airports, and that required them to actually call me to remind them, because they're always afraid that I'd forget. They called me 24 hours before I was supposed to pick them up from Reagan International Airport. At that moment, I decided to come clean, and I told them right there on the phone of what I did. Luckily, that gave me 24 hours for them to digest this information. Now, as I spent the next 24 hours cleaning the house and trying to make everything look right, much like Joel in Risky Business, if you remember, the prostitute stole all his furniture and he had to buy it all back. And he's frantically putting it back in the house. And that's me cleaning the house. And putting all my dad's tools. Also, I took out all his pornography and handguns, and I had to put those back in the closet too before they came home. I picked them up from the airport, and I was starting to feel pretty good because my parents weren't mad at me. We get home, and they're still not mad at me. I had taken the time during my frantic stage of fixing things. I fixed that rodeo picture frame. However, the glass was shattered, but the frame still looked okay, and I hung it back up. Dad gets home. He doesn't notice the frame. He doesn't even talk about the furniture because he's mad as hell that I forgot to water all his house plants. As well as being a super spy, my dad was an amateur plant lover. What is the word for that? A botanist? Botanist? I don't know. It sounds odd to me when I say it out loud. But yeah. The advice I have for you today, friends, is don't forget to water your plants.
Thank you, Chris. Uniquely, Chris has been collecting Michael Myers masks since he was 12 years old. And there may be a connection there. I don't know. Dad, CIA spy, Michael Myers, knife. I don't know. It's just the way my brain goes. So I couldn't tell you. At age 3, he fell from a chair, which led to a serious injury in which he bit his tongue off. We just saw that on the TV show last night. We were watching, what the hell was it? What's that medical show? The Pit. And one of the people, kind of thing. It was like, yuck. Anyways, the good news was she was hammered out of her mind, so she didn't really feel it. So, and it was surgically reattached, as obviously this is because he's here talking to us and not, but he chewed off the stitching and it had to be reattached again. So when you think of having a bad day, okay, think of that one, that works that way. All right, so our next storyteller is Tim Magill. Come on up, Tim.
17 veterans die by suicide every day. That's about 6,000 veterans dying every year. 2014, that number was about 22 every day. Back in 2014, I was the executive director of a nonprofit, pretty unusual one. It was an outdoor education center that specialized in trauma recovery. And about a 1,000-acre facility, we did all kinds of outdoor stuff, but one of the things that was most gratifying for me, we had the privilege of hosting a veteran PTSD recovery program. It was a 5-day, 4-night camp that was specifically designed and developed by veterans, for veterans, that combined psychoeducation, kind of classic counseling, but more importantly with equine-assisted psychotherapy, as well as challenge coursework, canoeing, all kinds of different outdoor activities. We were kind of at the forefront of what later became known now as adventure therapy. And there's actually a whole school of thought now in clinical psychology that shows that for some populations, particularly trauma-affected populations, outdoor adventure therapy can have a very powerful effect on trauma recovery and resilience building. So we were running this program. It was a 5-day, 4-night program. And let me tell you about Keith. Keith was a warrior, about 250 pounds, didn't have an ounce of fat on his body. And we're out in the middle of this beautiful 1,000-acre facility in Kentucky and starting this camp. So in drives Keith in his white pickup, big jacked up, big tires, about a mile-long driveway, and crunches into our kind of remote parking lot right next to this big outdoor amphitheater and pavilion that we got started with our programs on. So I'm sitting there at a table when the guys come up to register them, and out steps Keith, and he's got tattoos, and he's got serious mirrored sunglasses, and his eye and his head is on a swivel, and he's just checking out everything, looking for, basically for enemies that nobody else sees while he's walking up to us. And everything about this guy's demeanor says, "Get the fuck away from me." And here I am sitting at the table. Hi. Welcome. My job at that point was what clinical psychologists call offering unconditional positive regard. What does that mean? It's a clinical term. It just means that no matter what that person presents to you, how much you are reacting to them, you have to just have a flat affect. And so that was my job, but I'm here to tell you, you scared the shit out of me. But we get him checked in, and he gets all the stuff put down on the outdoor pavilion there while the rest of the guys are showing up and they're putting their gear down. He goes and finds himself the perch on the top of one of the outdoor picnic benches that we have sitting around the perimeter. And so he takes up station and he's scanning the whole time while the rest of the guys get checked in. So when I find a little time, I go saddle up to him and sit down on the top of this table, and I tried to talk to him casually a little bit, but, you know, what brings you here, Keith? Tell me a little bit about yourself while we're waiting for the guys. He continues just to scan, doesn't really have much affect, but he tells me a little bit about how he was deployed, and when he came back, his life started falling apart. He started drinking pretty heavy and started fighting at just about any little impetus would trigger him pretty quick. So his wife and his kids just didn't know him anymore, and his wife was desperate. He had been through the VA, had done all the counseling, had done all the traditional therapy, and his wife was kind of at her wit's end until she found out about this program that we were hosting at this center that I used to run. So she thought it was a pretty good idea at the time for him to enroll, because that was about the only thing she knew to do at that point. She was at her wit's end. He thought that was a stupid idea. And he was unabashed about it, that counseling's for pussies, that he was tough and he could just gut it out and it'll get better. But out of respect and love for his wife, he enrolled, whether or not he thought it was a good idea. So a couple of days into this program, I'm checking in on Keith every once in a while, and just as I feared, he really wasn't participating very much. He was kind of off to the side and wasn't really participating in activities. He wasn't participating or talking much during the sessions. He was always respectful of all the other guys, but just wasn't having it. Day 3. We're out at the challenge course. It's a climbing wall and apparatus. We have all these high ropes challenge course there. And this particular element that we were working on that day, day 3, is on the top of this soft rolling hill. Just beautiful, angelic, picturesque top of this hill that you can see 1,000 acre, all this bluegrass all around it. And on this hill on the top is a 40-foot pole. So picture a telephone pole, literally a telephone pole, 40 feet going up into the air. And on the side of this telephone pole is a bunch of steel staples, is what we call them, handholds, driven into the side so you can climb up, right? It makes a little makeshift ladder. On both sides of this pole are 2 other telephone poles. Each of them are 50 foot tall, and across the top of that is a big steel cable that suspends a pulley. And on that pulley is a big climbing rope, a belay rope, that goes up into that pulley and comes down the other side. This is all made up in apparatus that's called the leap of faith. And the idea is the participant, the warrior, gets put into a big full body harness, and we clip them in with a carabiner, and they climb that pole 40 feet up into the air. And on the top of the pole is a little platform, like yay big, just barely enough that you can haul yourself up there and stand up on this platform. And the idea is you jump off of this platform out into midair, and you're in this harness with a big belay rope, and I'm down on the ground with the belay team and hanging onto this rope. So when you fall, you get caught by this rope, and then we lower you down to the ground. So Keith's getting hooked up, and he's got his harness on, and we're clipping him in with the belay, and our one of the instructors comes up to him and says, okay, here's the deal, Keith, you're going to go up this pole, but you got to think about something before you go up that you want to let go of. When you get to the top of that pole, you're going to let go of whatever that is that's holding you back. And when you jump off, you're leaving that thing behind. And Keith is having none of it. It's like, what the fuck? Really? And I'm pardon my French, but these are the words that are coming out. What did my wife get me into? This is silly. This is so stupid. What am I going to let go of? Some emotional thing that's holding me back. All right. But pretty quick, something just bubbles up from underneath his gut. And he says, all right, fine. I'm going to let go of, I don't know, guilt. And before we have a chance to process what he just said, he starts climbing. And I and the belay team have to go scramble over and grab a hold of that belay rope, because now we got him going up that pole, and we need to have that safety rope on him. But we just barely had enough time to do that. He's about 30 feet in the air now, climbing up, and I'm here to tell you, he was booking. He was moving quick. I think the steel felt good in his hands. He liked climbing. This is not scary for him. He was a warrior. He liked climbing. I think for the first time, he kind of got out of his head for a little bit. But about 30 feet up, he starts shaking, and he holds onto that pole for dear life. And we're all wondering what's going on, because he stopped. All of a sudden, a story comes out while he's 30 feet up in the air holding onto this pole. And he tells the story about how all of a sudden you could see, just his eyes are shut, you could see that he's re-envisioning what's going on in his head when he was deployed. And he was driving a Humvee, an armored vehicle. And they were going through a village, and all of a sudden they start taking contact. Headphones on, he's got these earmuff headphones. Commander comes up over his headphones. Contact left, contact right, floor it, go. Keith mashes that accelerator down, and they go fishtailing through this village. They finally get just about out of the village, and they come to the last turn, and they make that last turn, fishtailing around, and he feels that Humvee bump a little bit, but they get the rest of the way out of the village. And then he realizes that little bump was him running over a 10-year-old boy who was in the wrong place at the wrong time, just happened to be walking across the street in his village in the middle of a firefight. Did I mention Keith had a 10-year-old boy at home? This story came out for the first time. It had been suppressed in his gut for so long. I don't even know if Keith remembered. He certainly didn't talk about it with his wife. He didn't talk about it with the VA counselor. It only came out up on that pole 30 feet in the air, and now he's stopped shaking. And we're quiet down on the ground. We're still holding on to that belay rope. One of our instructors hollers up to him and says, "Okay, you let go of that shit right now. That's what you're going to let go of when you get on the top of that pole. Now get up that pole, soldier." And sure enough, he took a deep breath, made it the last 10 feet, shimmies his way up on top of that little platform. And I swear, we're looking up about 40 feet up in the air, and you could see him grow another foot taller as he sticks his arms out in the air. Just takes a little bit of a spring to step and launches off of that pole with a big war cry. Ah! Falls about 5-10 feet. We catch him on the belay rope, and that was quite a jolt on that belay rope. And now we've got Keith's life literally and physically in our hands as we lower him down to the arms of all the other warriors. That was the day that Keith got lowered into these F-bomb dropping 250-pound warriors' arms, and they became brothers that day. That was the day that Keith began to heal. So, go back to Keith's wife. She thought it was a pretty good idea at the time for him to enroll. I think it was. Thank you.
Tim's graced the platform a couple of times before and has really done some amazing work in his life. That wasn't the only thing that he's done to help others, and he has an amazing background in history, and just the life most of us want to lead, I think. And yeah, thank you is a word. So when he told me, when we were talking, or actually emailing, he told me that when he was a kid, he had some auspicious neighbors. The Grateful Dead band lived next door to him, which is interesting and probably another story, but his siblings loved the idea, but most of the neighborhood didn't. Also, by proclamation of the governor of Kentucky, Tim was honored to receive the title of Kentucky Colonel and to be welcomed into the historic and honorable order of Kentucky Colonels, and that is a real thing. So, and we're back. We're going to do a couple of wild cards, and wild cards, for those of you who don't know, are cold turkey, 5-minute stories, true, any topic, don't have to be on theme for the night, and so we pick 2 out of the box, and I'm mixing them up. First one, Sandy Ritter. That's not good. Sandy Ritter. Somebody put your name in. Da, 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 da. Okay. Do you want to do it, or do you want us to choose another name? Well, I'll tell you what. Think about it. We'll do this person first. Lisa Doherty. Is Lisa Doherty still in the room? There's Lisa Doherty. All right.
Yes, my name is Lisa Doherty. I am the daughter of the late Mary and John Doherty, and the oldest of 4 daughters, which, kind of has you on a high platform as the oldest of 4. I was also, during this time, I was a freshman at Regina Dominican High School in Wilmette, Illinois. It was Sunday, beginning of May, happened to be Mother's Day, and I was had some homework. I was very studious at the time, and I told my mother that I was going to Kathleen O'Grady's house to study on this Sunday, Mother's Day, and instead I was actually going driving with Bill Ransom, who I knew as Handsome Ransom, and Handsome Ransom came to pick me up down the block in his powder blue Gremlin. Remember those? And Handsome Ransom had a driver's permit. So we didn't go too far. We were just kind of anxious to drive, and I was kind of excited to drive with him. We didn't go too far. We actually went down the block of Avers Avenue where I lived. There had been a lot of robberies on our block of late. So some of the neighbors noticed the car in front of their home. It was kind of a strange car. And they happened to call the police. So all of a sudden, we were kind of smooching. And it got really, really bright, because there was a police car in front of us and behind us. So I said, Bill, I think something's wrong. And the policeman came to the car, and they knocked on the window and rolled down the window. Can I see your license and registration? And he said, well, officer, I don't really have my license yet. I have my permit. My sister dropped us off here. She's visiting her friend, and she's coming back to pick us up. And I looked at him like, not a good story, Bill. I mean, I live down the street, so I keep saying to the officer, no, he makes us get out of the car. So we're standing there. I said, officer, I live right down the street, like 5 houses down. Can I just go home? No, you may not. So I'm standing there, and next thing I know, all of a sudden, I see my mother's face over the steering wheel. Now, she's called the O'Grady's, and she knows I'm not stunning over there. And so I see her. She's in her red Buick Riviera over the steering wheel, like, oh, my God. And I'm standing there with the policemen, like 4 of them, and Bill. Now I'm like, officer, there's my mother. Can I please go home with her? There she is. So she gets out of the car. She's hysterical. And I just keep repeating, can I please go home, please go home? Anyway, so he says, okay, you can go home in the patrol car. Now I go to get in the front seat. Bill, I don't know what he's talking with the officers. I'm done with him. And I just want to go home. And so I go to get in the front seat of the patrol car. Sorry, regulation, I got to go in the back seat of the patrol car. Now we follow my mother home, a few houses down to the driveway. And my father's there in the front door with my 3 younger sisters. And he comes up to the door, lets me out, and he says, Mr. and Mrs. Doherty, I just want to assure you that Bill and Lisa were both fully clothed. And I'm like, oh my God. Now my sister Jennifer says, Lisa, you're like Mary Magdalene or something. I'm like, oh. That's my story.
That was funny. You're going to be giving it a whirl? All right, Sandy. Sandy, everybody.
Sandy Ritter. Thank you. My story starts probably a number of years ago. Our children, Tim Magill and my daughter, were living nearby in Mayer at a camp. And we used to come up and visit them frequently, and so we became familiar with the area. In Mayer, there's nothing to do, so if you want to do anything, go shopping or whatever, you come to Prescott. So we became familiar with Prescott. And so about 6 years ago, my husband decided, let's rent a house in Prescott, or buy a house that we can use for a rental in Prescott. So I said, okay, I don't mind coming up and buying a house in Prescott to rent. Just don't ever expect me to want to live there. I'm not going to want to live there. We lived in California, and at that time, California was pretty decent, but over a period of time, it got to be pretty bad. And it got to the point where a lot of our friends that we had known for many, many years started getting a little crazy. And when they didn't, if any kind of a conversation, if it would hit their hot spot, they would explode. And one day, it was my birthday, and me and two other friends and I went out for birthday lunch, and one of my friends brought up some subject that had nothing to do with anything, but the third person took exception to it and kind of went a little berserk. And so I came home and I said to my husband, guess what? I'm ready to move. I'm ready to go to Prescott. In the meantime, we had come up a number of times and visited and saw this wonderful community being built, the Touchmark community, which is where we now live. And we had met some wonderful friends that made us feel very, very welcome. So when the time came, we became Touchmark Prescott residents, and I just want to say we love being here. This is just the most marvelous, most wonderful community, and I thank everybody for making us feel so welcome.
So our next storyteller? Storyteller? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm from Boston originally. Okay, thank you. Clay Hurtubise. Come on up, Clay.
This is called Birds of a Feather. We had hiked, biked, drank beer, and of course, eaten pizza together. We were birds of a feather. There's a picture of the two of us on the summit of Mont Blanc in France. There's no picture of us as we climbed up through a waterfall on the Eiger. On the descent, I was the first down. Bill, when he came down, was in line for the mouth of an underground river. I gently pulled him aside, avoiding a cold burial. At the time, I thought he had a good heart. It broke my heart when he came and announced that he had joined the Air Force and only had a few days left in the U.S. I was determined to show him a good time. That summer, I had taken up rock climbing. Though still a novice, I had climbed with some very experienced people. So I said, Bill, why don't we climb White Horse Ledge together? I want you to experience what I feel when I rock climb. And I said, it's it's Mother Nature is my church, and when I'm climbing, it's like communion. All other thoughts and worries dissipate, and you're just focused on the one good thing. And he said, okay, that's fine, but I don't have equipment. No problem, we'll rent you a safety harness and climbing shoes at the shop. I said, I'll take you up something easy. It's called friction climbing. It's all about keeping pressure on your feet on the ledge. And there's no handholds, there's very little protection. It is really all about your feet, so never forget that. Okay, well, White Horse Ledge is 1,400 feet tall. Most of the climbs are 600 to 800 feet. The average angle is about 30 degrees. It doesn't sound bad until you're a couple hundred feet up. And so this would be the first time I ever led a climb. Remember, I'm just a novice. And so I get Bill all set up and show him the ropes, so to speak, and show him how to hold it should I ever yell falling, which is something you really want people to know. And so with the guidebook in my back pocket, I start up this easy route. And everything's going great. We get up to this large belay station where you can actually stand up straight because most of the time you're on that 30-degree angle. And there was actually a place to clip in and feel secure. And Bill's feeling better now at this point. And I head on up, and I find a bolt in the rock with a hook that I can clip my carabiner into, and that would protect me should I fall. And that was about 100 feet above Bill. So I keep going, and another 30 feet, I'm at the end. I'm thinking, damn, not bad. But it was really hard because when I was at that bolt, I misread the guidebook. And I left the easy route and went on a much more difficult route. Well, 30 feet later, I have to make this reach for a handhold, a rare one. And as I reach, I know I made a mistake. And I thought, uh-oh, this is going to hurt. It did. When I reached for it, I broke a rock climber's commandment. Thou shalt not change the angle of thy feet. My feet started to slip. I yelled, falling! I didn't want to admit defeat, and I grabbed onto the rock as hard as I could, trying to stop the fall. I put it on silent, and so I start to fall. My shins, my knees, my forearms all make contact, and it just rips the skin right off. Every finger was raw meat. All the fingertips were gone. I'm falling, and I tumble over a ledge that shoots me out into the open. And then with the rope, it swings me back, and I slam into the ledge. I'm a wreck. My T-shirt belongs in the Vatican. It's covered in stigmata. And a climber on another route yells out, dude, epic fall, man. I had fallen the equivalent of a 6-story building. I was hanging by an 11.5 millimeter rope, 600 feet above the ground. I only looked down once. I'm swinging in midair, and the rope is gently putting me back and forth. I'm 20 feet from any hard surface. And I'm looking up, and it was surreal because you can't see anything physical. You're suspended in the sky by this thin rope, and you felt as if you could reach up and touch an angel. That's how weird it was. And I asked Bill to lower me, And I get back on the rock, and it takes me a while to regain composure. And I thought about descent, but that was much more complicated and riskier than my trying to just finish the climb. So I headed on back up. And at the point where I had slipped, there was bits of skin in the rock. I got up to the top and tied in securely, and I put tension on the rope so Bill would have an easy time getting up. And he did. We get back to my apartment, and he had to take off for home. Well, my roommate, also named Bill, was home. And we go upstairs, and I'm telling him about the adventure. And we were becoming close friends. We did hiking and biking, just like with Bill, and, you know, pizza and beer, that type of stuff. And we were more than roommates, and we were good friends. And the doorbell rings. And he goes, "Stay there, I'll get it." He comes back with a Cheshire grin on his face and just laughing quietly to himself. For behind him was a man carrying a briefcase. I had forgotten that I had an appointment with a life insurance salesman. You gotta picture me. My shirt is all torn, ripped, and bloody. My legs are bleeding. Both hands are in towels with ice cubes in them. And I'm sitting there in pain, and Bill's laughing his butt off. And this guy starts to ask me questions. "Do you smoke?" "No." Bill can't contain himself and quietly goes, "Ask him if he rock climbs." "Do you hang glide?" "No. I had given it up the week before when I had a near fatal crash. And that might be the next topic. Sorry. And so Bill gets a little more gumption and says a little bit louder, "Ask him if he rock climbs." The agent clearly hears him but ignores him. He says, "Do you drink or do drugs?" And I said, "Well, I have a beer or two occasionally, but I'm a pharmacist, so I just push the drugs," I said jokingly. And Bill gets a little louder. "Ask him if he rock climbs." And the agent continues. He's got this checklist that he's checking off that I make sure I'm not a risk. And "Do you surf or race motorcycles?" "No." At this point, Bill's in tears. And he takes a pillow that he'd been covering his face with so he wouldn't interrupt us, throws it on the couch, goes to his bedroom, and he's laughing hysterically, turns around, "Ask him if he rock climbs." The agent ignored him. And he puts down some paperwork and says, "Well, if you decide to get it, just sign these papers and call me." And he sticks his hand out. I forgot the condition of my body. So I take a hand out of the towel, and I shake hands, and I get blood all over his. And he's staring at it, down like that, just quietly, not saying a word. So I hand him a towel, and I go, "I rock climb." And he goes, "So I gathered." I never bought the policy. But with both Bills, they were birds in my flock. We're all the same type. We had saved each other's lives during climbing expeditions, and that builds a really tight bond, something to chirp about, you know? I thought I would grow old with them, but then I came out as gay. Within the hour of hearing that, both birds flew the coop, never to be heard from again.
Clay, a little personal information that he's had 2 TBIs, and those are, for those who don't know, traumatic brain injuries, and a stroke. Obviously, he doesn't work anymore. He doesn't climb mountains anymore. So he writes, and he writes stories about life and his life and others and things like that. As a matter of fact, one of the books he has written is going to be translated into Swahili and then distributed throughout this the country of Africa, the nation of Africa, the continent of Africa, yeah, Africa, yeah, that place over there, you know, that way. So, you know, kind of amazing in and of itself. He's climbed from Maine to Nepal. He's currently climbing the Stroke, and this is his words, hoping to summit. He was born in a potato farm. He was his mother's eye. He peeled away from Maine after feeling fried. Now he's cooked up a nice life in Arizona. Those are his words, not mine. I don't want anything to do with that, so that's okay. But, okay, thank you, Claire. Okay, so we have one more storyteller, and then we'll close out. But if all the storytellers, including the wild cards, please hang out. We'll do some photos up here afterwards. So please don't skip out the door as soon as it ends. And let's see, who's our last storyteller? Huh? Who could that possibly be? I don't know. Pat Kelley, it must be you.
My story is about love, forbidden love. Most of us remember our first love, and it's easy for me to remember my first love because my first love was my first cousin, George, whom I called Georgie. His mom and my mom were sisters, and they were very close, and as a result, we became very close. We were both only children, but we grew up in the context of an extended family in Queens. The time period I'm talking about is the 50s and 60s. Georgie lived on the next block from me. When I was born, he was 4 years old, and he was told at the time to treat me gently, care for me. I was the last born in the extended family, and I was the only girl. So I was precious cargo. And Georgie took this to heart. He became my caregiver, my teacher, and my protector. I spent most of my childhood in Georgie's house. His house was more kid-friendly than mine. In my house, our snacks were fruit, vegetables, and nuts. In his house, snacks were ice cream, candy, chips. His mom was more casual than mine. So we would spend a lot of time in his kitchen, and he taught me to play tic-tac-toe. He taught me connect the dots and other little pencil and paper games. So we would spend a lot of time at his kitchen table, just playing little things. One day we were there, and in my whiny way, I said, "I'm hungry." And Georgie, who was probably 9 or 10 at the time, said, "I'm going to teach you how to make lunch." So he got up, he pulled my chair over by the counter because I was too short to reach it and I could kneel on it, and he taught me how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So he toasted the bread and then gave me a knife, which I was not allowed to have in my house, and showed me how to spread the Skippy peanut butter and then some of our grandmother's homemade jelly on the sandwich. And then he allowed me to cut it with a knife. So I felt so good. That was the most delicious sandwich, and I knew now I could feed myself. Well, Georgie's enthusiasm, "I'm going to teach you how to make lunch," was indicative of his personality. He was an extrovert, he was outgoing, he was this positive guy. I, on the other hand, was very introverted, very quiet, very studious, and I don't know, Georgie did it, very shy. But when I was with Georgie, I wasn't shy. I was so happy. We had so much fun. So right about this time, I was home at my house in the kitchen with my parents, and I announced, "When I grow up, I'm going to marry Georgie." And in a nanosecond, both of them together said, "You can't." And it was as if they struck me, which they would never, ever do. But I was taken aback. Why not? They said, "Because he's your cousin, and you cannot marry your cousin. It's a rule." Now, we had rules in my house, pick up your toys, eat your vegetables, but this rule seemed very unjust. And nothing more was said. It was like, case closed, no marrying your cousin. So my happiness was a bit tarnished, but I didn't tell Georgie about the rule. I figured if he didn't know, then it's best. I'm not going to tell him. So we went on, and we spent, the childhood years. We went on family vacations, and on one notable family vacation, we were in Florida at the beach, and Georgie was a fantastic athlete, and he swam like a dolphin. And I was doing my little dog paddle, and he swam over to me, and he said, "I'm going to teach you how to swim." And he did. So he taught me how to not drown. So he's taught me how to not starve and not drown. Well, then, kind of the inevitable happened. Georgie entered his teen years and started dating. And I was very, very jealous. He had grown from a cute boy into a handsome young man. He was about 6 foot tall, dirty blonde hair, brown eyes, supremely fit, athletic, and his personality was such, he had the megawatt smile. And his personality was such that every boy in the neighborhood thought that he was Georgie's best friend, and every girl thought she was Georgie's girlfriend. But I did know better. So when he was getting ready for his dates, I would go over to his house, and he wore the outfit of a cool Queens guy in the 50s, which consisted of Levi's, engineer boots, a white T-shirt with cigarettes rolled in the sleeve, and to top it, a black motorcycle jacket, and to top it off, a DA haircut. Now, I was told that I'd have to explain what a DA haircut is. And it is a pompadour, think Elvis, or think Fonzie as a later time. And hair combed back, it was sculpted, like the back of a duck's tail. So it's a DA duck's ass. So Georgie would craft his hair. He used Vaseline hair tonic. He would craft his hair, sculpt it, and I would watch him in the mirror. And when he was done, I reached up and messed it up. Now, he wouldn't dare get angry at me, so he would fix it again, and it was looking really, really good. And so I do it 2 or 3 times. I didn't want him to get angry. And he would go out on his dates. Well, he did take me on dates with these girls. So I don't know what the girls thought, but it was Georgie, the girl, and me. And it seemed to be like love. Georgie's motto was love me, love my cousin. But he didn't always take me on the date. So one night I was at home alone. I was about maybe, something happened that brightened my mood around this time. I was 11 years old, and I read the newspaper. My family was not educated, but everybody had newspapers. And we had the Daily News, and I read that the musician, rock singer, Jerry Lee Lewis, had married his cousin. Well, this was of great interest to me. And I read further, and this happened in Mississippi. And I thought, Mississippi apparently doesn't have the rule. So my plan, now the girl was 13, I was only 11. So I had a little ways to go, but I thought, well, Georgie and I could go to Mississippi. It's near Florida, we knew where Florida was, and we could become a couple. So during Georgie's dating years, I was not dating, I was too young. So I was home one evening at my house. My parents went out on dates all the time. And he came, surprised me on a Saturday night. I said, oh, you know, what are you doing? You want an orange? You know, some chopped vegetables or something? No, he said, put on some music, put on some records. Oh, okay. He said, I'm going to teach you how to dance. And he did. So time went on. I went to, Georgie graduated from high school. He started driving. I was starting high school. And he took up bowling. I told you he was this very good athlete, and he was an excellent bowler. He was able to use a fingertip ball, if you know what that is. Just the little tips go in the ball, not your whole finger. And I used to go to our local bowling alley and watch him. And one day, I was watching him, and he said, I'm going to teach you how to bowl. And he did. So we would go on kind of our own little dates. He would borrow his mom's car. At this time, he was able to drive. And we would go to a bowling alley that was about 15 minutes from our house. We would bowl, have some hamburgers, and have a nice evening. And I got to be a pretty good bowler. And then for a couple weeks, a month or so, I didn't see him because I was busy with school. He had started working. And then he called me one night and he said, how about we go bowling? And he had gotten a new car. And of course, for young men, a new car is a big thing. And for me, it was like, oh, Georgie got a car. And it was a 1962 Rambler American. Did anybody have such a car? I don't know. You know it? Oh, good. Yeah. It was a seafoam green. It was a cool car. So he picked me up at my house, and we went to the bowling alley, had our hamburgers, and nice night. We were coming home, and we were on a main road going to where our houses were, and I was not paying much attention. And then the next thing I knew, Georgie had turned off the main road into a darker road that led into a park. Now, this park is Cunningham Park, still exists, one of the biggest parks in Queens. And it had ball fields, picnic areas, trails for hiking. It was a very family-friendly park. However, at night, it was a lover's lane. So Georgie turned into this very large parking lot. The part where we turned had lights in it, but we could see in the distance all of these cars parked where people were doing non-family-friendly things. I was completely, I didn't know what to think. And he was completely silent. I was completely silent, but inside, I was panicking. I was thinking, Georgie, what are you doing? This is not right. Our family will be disgraced. This is something I've wanted all my life, but we're not in Mississippi. We're in Queens. Again, complete silence. Then he got out, he stopped the car. He got out and walked around to my door, opened my door, and I looked up at him. Again, no words were spoken, but I was so terrified. And I looked up at him, and he gave me the megawatt smile and said, I'm going to teach you how to drive. And he did.
And I'm not sure that the people in the cars were not doing family unfriendly things, in a manner of speaking. Well, I'll just let that kind of hang out there. So what'd you think? Was that great or what? When Pat was in 7th grade, she wanted to be a stewardess, but was too tall. And back then they had those rules. You had to fit in a box in order, yeah. It was another one of those rules. In 8th grade, she wanted to be a Supreme Court justice because their salary was $25,000 a year. Okay, for context, $25,000 a year in 1950s is about $400,000 a year now. Yeah, so that Supreme Court justices earn a little over $300,000 a year. That's what they get. So just so put that in your Funkin' Wagnalls and smoke it. Okay. So that's that. So if you want to, we will have all of these stories posted to our YouTube channel, like I said. There is also a podcast, thank you, that is all audio. It is Stories That Matter AZ. If you just look at your, wherever you look at your normal podcasts, put in Stories That Matter AZ, and it's there. It's great. It's wonderful because the stories are great and wonderful. So, you know, you can do that. I want to thank Liz again and the Elks for their support of this program. They have been wonderful to us and our sister program as well. I have one quote for you. Stories have to be told or they die. When they die, we can't remember who we are or why we're here. Sue Monk Kidd. So let's tell some stories, folks. Thank you all for coming.